Whoa. Whoa. Holy mackerel. What are those? Are those all smallmouth? What are those? Hello everyone, back at it again. This time I'm in my crawdad. I left the yellow kayak at home. I got a bunch of rods with me, and I've got the trolling motor. My original plan was to fish the other side of the lake. We got blue skies, south wind today, and I figured I'd just kind of work my way back up the lake with the wind. But as I was launching, I saw some fish in this kind of river stream area where this river stream thing dumps into the lake. And I couldn't quite tell what they were at first. It ended up being it was like a wolf pack of smallmouth. Now, most of these smallmouth in that wolf pack were, 1.5, 2 pounds maybe. But there were some bigger smallmouth in the mix. The water's really clear. I don't know. There was just a little peak of the clear water on the right there. And that clear water made it especially hard to fool the bigger ones. The smaller ones, they weren't that hard to fool. I started out fishing a BFS rod with a Megabass Karashi just to see if I could get any of them in the boat. I've got a 10-pound Suffix 832 mainline and a 6-pound Yozuri hybrid leader. And even that, I felt at times was a little bit much. It took a while. There was probably, 20 smallmouth in front of me, and it took a while to finally convince one of them to eat it. But eventually he did eat it. Gave me a little tussle here, which is good. They all fight like they're 4 pounds on BFS gear. But I have to be careful not to pop that little snap on the Karashi. At this point, I still was fishing it with a decoy egg snap, just so I could change lures. But eventually that snap started to bend out, so I tied direct. But anyway, I just have to be a little bit careful with these fish. They get a lot stronger in current too, plus smallmouth always pull so hard. But anyway, I just have to be a little bit careful with these fish. Make sure I don't pop them off. You can see the outflow of the current there. What the deal was there was a bait fish, and I think they're herring. I don't know how the herring got in here, but I think they're herring. And they were in schools, and I couldn't quite tell if they were coming down the river or the herring were just attracted by the moving water and moving up the river. But basically at that river mouth, entrance, effluence, whatever you want to call it, there's a bunch of smaller smallmouth stacked, and they were waiting to ambush, like about that size. And they were waiting to ambush these schools of herring. There were also more smallmouth upriver, and there was more smallmouth kind of behind me, about 50 yards behind me. And it was a little bit easier to fool the smallmouth in current, and I'd say they bit better when there was more current too. And the current wasn't always constant. There might be some power generation stuff at play here. I'm not really sure, but the flow and the current and the eddies and the back eddies were not consistent throughout the day, or at least the afternoon. And so when the current was pulling hard, it almost reminded me of striper fishing. The fish bit better. You can see I've got some wind right now. That seemed to help the bite too. But the combination of wind and current really seemed to help. And then at different times, these schools of bait fish, again, I think they're herring, would come by. There are also these ducks, I think they're called eiders, and they were chasing the bait too. And it seemed like, almost again like saltwater, where you have, say terns or cormorants pushing down on the bait from above and the fish pushing up. It wasn't quite like that, although sometimes there was some seagulls in the mix too that kind of reminded me of saltwater. But it seemed like the eiders were chasing the bait around, and then 5 minutes later, you'd see the smallmouth chasing the bait too. And I don't know if the eiders were stunning the bait fish or just chasing them and breaking up the schools or what. But there definitely seemed to be an impact with the eiders too. And that's another smallmouth on the Karashi. And that one's a little bit bigger. So we're heading in the right direction. Got my forceps here to pop those little tiny hooks off. The hooks are still pretty small. I did upgrade them. I think they're size 8 now. The ones that come with it are really tiny. I mean like panfish tiny. Yeah, we're getting there. That one I think was 3.5. I might have put them on a scale even. I don't remember. I gotta kind of watch the boat to make sure I don't run aground with the current pushing me around. The current kind of caught me in different ways with the Crawdad. It's not the greatest boat in current or wind. Basically the hull's designed like a matchbox, so it's just basically a big rectangle. It's great to fish out of though. Anyway, sometimes the current would pull me and push me, and I could get stuck sometimes in these back eddies with the current, and that would enable me to stay in one place basically and fish comfortably, which was nice. I think that one was 3.5. I know it was off camera. So anyway, there was these moments where the smallmouth would be chasing bait, and the eiders were chasing bait, and everything was great, and the current was pushing, the wind was pushing, and then there'd be like these dead periods, maybe 30 minutes, sometimes up to an hour, where just nothing was happening. And I think these fish can pretty much feed on the bait at will. So anyway, I decided I'd try something a little bit bigger. And this is a river to sea S-waver. It's 168 glide bait. Camera cut out there, but that was the best fish of the trip. That's a 4-pound, 2-ounce smallmouth. And yeah, it's too bad the camera cut out because that fish was jumping all over the place. But I had him on a heavy power rod, 30-pound braid, 20-pound leader. And I had upgraded those hooks too, those treble hooks. They were owner ST56s, size 2 I believe, which causes that bait to sink just a little bit. That's a nice thick fish. Anyway, there was no chance that fish was coming off unless it threw the hook or something. There's no chance he was going to break that line or bend out the hooks. They're pretty beefy stuff. I mean, I probably could catch stripers on that thing the way it's rigged now. But all the other fish for this entire trip were all on BFS gear, light line, and I couldn't really get them to go for too much else. You know, I had a few more go for the, let's see if it'll show up on camera. There's 4.9, 4.2, yeah, 4.1. He's right around 4.2. Anyway, I had a few more go for the S-waver. I had a couple bump it. I had one out of the water completely going after it, but he just didn't get the hooks. And I think those were mostly smaller fish. This is the best fish of the trip, so I'm going to take a picture of him. Or her, I guess. Probably a her. And I could see some bigger fish in the clear water, but man, they were tough. Trying to get them to go. The other problem I had was that this wolf pack, and there were a few wolf packs of these, 1.5, 2-pound smallmouth, would beat the bigger smallmouth to the smaller baits. And, I tried a bunch of different stuff. I tried 7-inch swim baits. I tried Kitex. Tried an underspin. Tried a jig. I was wishing I had a tube with me. I didn't have my tubes with me. But what caught the most fish was a little finesse fluke. And it's made by Bass Assassin. It's called the Bass Assassin Shad. I have to chase this fish down. It's sort of like saltwater. I'm using the trolling motor to chase this fish out the river. It was funny when the fish would get hooked on BFS gear, almost all of them would turn and run out into the lake. You know, they wouldn't run upriver, they'd run into deeper water. Which was handy for me because if they started running upriver, I don't think there was too much I could do to stop them. That's another nice one. I don't think quite as big, maybe 3 pounds.
3 pounds or so?
Yeah, there's that little bass assassin shad.
Yeah.
Maybe more, like 2.5. He's been caught before. You can see his lips are a little beat up.
There you go, bud. Thanks for playing.
But yeah, here's another look at that bass assassin shad. It's just a finessier version of a fluke. It's a little bit smaller than a fluke. To maintain a similar weight, they kind of filled in that belly slot with plastic. So it's a little harder to set the hook. You definitely need a wide gap hook. But once you get them pinned with that single hook, it's pretty hard for them to throw it. I'm using a light wire mustad grip pin fine wire hook in the size 2/0. And with BFS gear, that's plenty of hook. I haven't bent out that hook yet, even though it's a fine wire. And it's pretty easy to set. You know, it's a thinner wire. You don't have to really put the screws to them. That hook pretty much sets itself. But yeah, they were stacked in here. And I don't feel like I had them all that dialed in. You know, I was working for these bites, and I only could get them to go for a few lures. I mean, I even threw a Megabass Dark Sleeper around for a while, which is usually like smallmouth candy. They wouldn't touch it. So it was a pretty specific bite. They were definitely dialed in on herring. And I'm used to fishing herring lakes, so that's usually pretty good for me. But yeah, they weren't easy to fool. And the other thing I should say is that I've never seen this here before. And I think it's a big part of this was a timing thing. You know, most of the time when I come here, it's not like this. And I have to work for every bite. But for whatever reason, these fish were all about chasing the herring and feeding up for winter, I guess. And it turned into a really good day. Again, when they get into the current, they pull really hard. I have to kind of baby them with the lighter line and the BFS rod. My drag's going. That's a 7.2 Shimano Corrado medium light BFS rod. And it's really not a BFS rod. It's really kind of too heavy for BFS. I feel like it's mislabeled. But it is a medium light casting rod. And at that, it does pretty well. Just in you know, the regular bass fishing world, not BFS. But it's good for all kinds of stuff. You can do a lot with that rod. And I think there's another version in the Zodius and the X-Bride too, but I just have the Corrado and it works great for me. There's another one, nice and tall, nice and thick. They were all built nice and thick. They probably weighed, I don't know, some of them at least a half a pound. Some of the bigger ones that were built like that, they'd weigh a pound more than I'd catch them other places. Yeah, so there's fish popping up occasionally in the river, but also outside the river, near the mouth, a little bit further out. I pretty much just stayed in the same spot just because it was convenient and there was fish there and I was trying to figure out how to catch them. The best lure was probably this finesse fluke, the Bass Assassin Shad. The Karashi caught a bunch too, but in general it caught smaller fish. I got that one 4-pound 2-ounce fish on the River to Sea S-Waver. But that was kind of a fluke, you know, that was during one of those slower periods. I was blind casting out into deeper water, working it slowly, get that S wave going, and then I'd give it 2 twitches and then start cranking again, and that fish smoked it. But that was kind of a one-off. Most of these fish were pretty line shy, and BFS was the name of the game. I even tried, a spinning rod with a little tiny underspin. I got a few fish to bump it but not eat it. I said I tried the Kitech. I got a couple bumps, but nothing really ate it. So it was a very specific bite. The other thing that helped, and it took me a while to figure this out because I usually don't do it, was I was putting scent on the Bass Assassin shad, and it was Procure Super Gel herring scent. That one's probably closer to 2. Still nice and thick. And they seem to really respond well to the scent. Now, if you ever fish for smallmouth a lot, they like the gulp scent, they like max scent, they like all that stuff. But basically, they like scent. But with flukes, I feel like I'm moving it pretty fast. It shouldn't make that much difference. They don't have a lot of time to sit there and smell it. They're either going to eat it or not. But in this case, and it took me a while to figure this out, but the scent really seemed to help them decide to commit. And I watched a few of them in the clear water. They'd chase it all the way up to the boat. They'd watch it kind of flutter down and fall like a dying shad or herring, and they'd turn away. And when I put the scent on it, when it was kind of stalling out and fluttering down and has a little shimmy on the fall, then they'd eat it with the scent. And so that was kind of a big deal too. Oh, I tried some strolling baits, which have been red hot for me this summer and early fall. They wouldn't touch those. I'm wondering, if I go back another weekend, if they might hit a tube, cracking a tube underneath them, or maybe a small swim bait that looked a lot like a herring. They might go for those. I was even thinking of trying a blade bait in that current, because I could see better fish, usually closer to the bottom, down low, and some of them were real nice fish, and they acted a little bit differently than the smaller wolf packs of smallmouth. They seem more opportunistic and less eager to chase. There's another one. Yeah, nice and thick. Here I am. I'm casting back at that river mouth again. I've fished here more than a handful of times, and I've never seen it like this. Maybe it's just like an early morning thing. Most of the time they're chasing herring and they eat their fill in the morning and that's it, and they shut down. For whatever reason, they decided to get on an afternoon bite while I was here, and I think I just kind of lucked into them a little bit too. I heard them before I even launched the boat. I could hear the fish chasing bait and splashing around. And when I first started, I wasn't even sure they were smallmouth. I thought they could be trout or some other kind of fish, or maybe even suckers spawning or something in the river. So I was really surprised when I threw the karashi in there, and I don't know how many little smallmouth came up. Say 15 of them, 12, maybe as many as 20 down below too. And I knew I kind of stumbled onto something good, but I'm wondering if I go back, in a weekend or two, is this just going to be like a one-off thing? And it's not going to set up like this again. You never know. So I got some time to think about what lures I want to throw at them. Hopefully get a few more to commit to some different baits. And I really want to see if I can crack the code for some of those bigger fish. I mean, I got that one on the S-Waver,
Off the hook.
and I got a few, nice solid fish, some 3 pounds plus
Oh, yeah.
on the BFS gear. That's another one. And that one, that was funny. That one threw the hook.
Caught a few times.
Pretty sure he threw the hook before I could get him in the net. And I jammed that net into the water and scooped him up. Now, that was pretty lucky catch with the net, but I was lucky in that he was swimming towards me still. But I just jammed the net into the water and caught him, and he didn't have a hook in him or anything. So I was really happy to get that one in the boat. 'Cause, yeah, that could have gone a completely different way very easily. I'm back at that river effluence. Just twitching the finesse fluke. I missed one there. See if he'll come back for it. There he is. The reel I'm fishing is a Kingdom Micro Monster. It's kind of a entry-level BFS reel. It's based on the Dark Wolf Ultra. There's a bunch of different clones of that reel. They all probably come out of the same factory. They're super similar. This Kingdom reel, the Micro Monster, it's got pink highlights, which I'm not too crazy about. But in terms of function, it's okay. I've noticed it's a little bit slow to engage. Sometimes after I cast and I start turning that handle, the reel doesn't engage quite like it should. But I think I paid about $50 for it. And in the world of BFS, that's pretty good. And it performs like a $50 reel, maybe a little bit better. I wish that it had another pound or two of drag, but for BFS reels, that's pretty standard. I'm not fishing for little stream trout. I'm fishing for 3 pound smallmouth, 4 pound smallmouth. I don't always get them, but that's the goal. And so I was wishing that there was a little bit more drag, but that's kind of comes with the territory in BFS. But for $50, if you just wanted to get into BFS and see if you like it, I think that little reel is a great deal. Just don't expect it to fish like a $300 reel, because it's not. That smallmouth, a little bit smaller, but he's got this big gash on his head. I was wondering, maybe he got attacked by a bird or a snapping turtle. I don't know what happened there, but he seems to be eating all right. I shifted over a little bit to the left. I'm not in the main current anymore. Sometimes I could get in these little back eddies. Back eddies are what I call it in the salt, when basically whenever the current is not moving in a direction that you'd expect it to based on the tide. And yeah, the back eddy was kind of holding me in place. I didn't have to use the trolling motor, and I could just set up and fish and make a bunch of repeated casts, and eventually one of them would go for it. A few times I had to put the trolling motor on and chase some of these fish, because the BFS spools aren't very deep, and I was afraid I'd get into my backing and maybe pop the backing knot. But that's the benefit of having a trolling motor, is that I can just flip it on and chase that fish a little bit. None of them seem to like the look of the net either. I almost lost a couple that saw the net and took one more dive. That's another big fat one. I guess he's not all that big, but he is fat. All of them were nicely proportioned. They're eating well in here. Thanks for playing, bud. That one was on the Bass Assassin Shad again. I could have used another bait, the Zoom Super Fluke Junior. And basically I was just being a little lazy, because I had the Karashi on that rod. But any kind of smaller, finessey, fluke type bait, I think would do well. checking my leader, checking my knot. It's a double line clinch there. I retied it a few times, but it did very well for me. So I kept casting around as the sun was setting. I didn't really do too much else, and pretty soon it was time for me to leave. But I had a really good time out here at this lake, and I'm really curious if I can duplicate this pattern again, or if I come back in a week or two and it's just completely dead. And if I do come back, I'm going to be bringing a whole bunch more baits that look like little 2-inch herring. And hopefully I can catch a few of those big ones that are being elusive. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list all the gear in the video description so you can duplicate what I was doing out here today. And hopefully have some good success wherever you might be fishing. I'll list all the rods, reels, hook upgrades, everything. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!